Welcome to the first session of our December workshop, How to Create a Newsletter That Actually Provides Value with Joshua Spector. Joshua is the creator of the popular For the Interested newsletter, reaching 25,000 plus readers each week, as well as an audience growth strategist, writer, and entrepreneur. By the end of this workshop, you will know the difference between a newsletter and email marketing, how newsletters benefit your email marketing strategy, the process of creating a newsletter with value. Now, before we dive into all of that, we're going to go over some housekeeping things. The recording of today's session will be available in DM Lab to review within 24 hours. For links to resources, the agenda, and all the nifty things, please check out the FAQ resource we have shared in chat. For Q&A, please make sure to post your question in the public chat, and we'll hold on to it for a Q&A at the end of the session. Please don't direct message it to us because there's no one there to answer it. And if you can, please have your cameras on so our presenter isn't speaking to a bunch of black boxes. We'd like to see your faces. So if you can, please turn on your camera. So let's get this going, and welcome Joshua Spector.
Hey guys, it would help if I unmuted. First of all, thank you for that nice introduction. Thank you for having me. Thank you to everyone that is here. I'm really excited to talk to you guys for a variety of reasons. One being I am slightly obsessed with newsletters, both reading them and creating them. Another being that my newsletter for the interested is which I've run, I publish every week. Actually, now I have a daily edition and a weekly edition. I think this week will be the 286th week in a row. It's about 5.5 years. It is the engine of everything I do from an audience growth perspective. I work as a consultant from a client perspective. Almost all my clients come through my newsletter or referred from people who have read my newsletter. And from a product, I sell info products and courses and that kind of stuff. The newsletter is the engine of all of it. And I also monetize it a bit with sponsorships and that kind of thing. So I also have a background in marketing. I've done it for studios. I ran digital media and marketing for the Academy of Motion Pictures for about 6 years, and then had them as a client for another 4 or 5 years after that. And one of the things that I found is I assume if you're here, you're already doing some form of email marketing or sending emails to clients or customers to drive sales or drive leads. It's interesting, as the term newsletter has sort of boomed, I think there's a lot of confusion about what is email marketing, what is a newsletter, all of it's sort of interchangeable. So today I'm going to sort of set up sort of my definition of what the difference is and why I think you actually need to do both email marketing and newsletters, and why a newsletter will help your email marketing be more effective. And then as the sessions go on, I'm going to show you exactly sort of how to create and launch or optimize your newsletter to hopefully get more of the results that you want and accomplish your goals. So with that in mind, I'll share my screen and we'll jump into it. Great. So here we go. So let's start with this, kind of like I just said, for context. I'm going to take you through why you need a newsletter as opposed to just the emails that you're probably at this point sending. To start, let's define the terms. Again, this is my definition, but I do think it's helpful to sort of clear up some of the confusion because people hear these words and some of you may think you already have a newsletter, maybe you don't. Some of you may think you have a newsletter and that's your email marketing, but I do think they're sort of different. The way I think about it is email marketing are emails that are designed to extract value from your audience. You're sending them specifically to get leads, to get sales, to get them to take a specific action. A newsletter I define as something that's designed to provide value to your audience. It's the opposite end of the coin. Now, a newsletter will ultimately lead to those other things. That's why it helps your email marketing. But your goal with sending a newsletter, and what I call sort of a content-driven newsletter, is to actually serve and provide value to your audience. It's not about promotion. It's not about sales, that kind of thing. The irony is a great newsletter, which provides value to your audience, will make your email marketing and allow you to extract much more value from them than just sending quote unquote email marketing emails. Going a little further into this, email marketing tends to be about you. The emails tend to be sales oriented. They tend to be promotional. If you think about it on some level, they're essentially saying, can you do this for us? Can you buy our thing? Can you support our cause? Will you do me a favor? And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. That is a part of business. So I'm not saying that with a judgment. It's just the reality is that's what most of those emails are essentially doing. On the flip side, a newsletter is about them, your audience, your customers, other people. Like I said, they're value oriented. The goal of the email is to provide value to people, to help them, to give them something useful. As a result, they tend to be content driven versus sales driven. And if you think about it, again, unlike can you do this for me, when you're sending a newsletter, you're essentially saying, can we do this for you? Can I give you resources that will help you? Can I give you, whatever it is that your audience will value, and we'll get into that in a moment. How can I send you something by email that's going to provide value to you? Another comparison, email marketing tends to be transactional. When you're writing an email marketing email, obviously you're looking for sales, for leads, for clients. So your entire structure of that email is about that transaction, right? You're in selling mode, you're in promotion mode, you're using copywriting skills designed to get people to take an action. That's very different than a newsletter. A newsletter is relational. It's intimate, and this is as compared to social media. One of the things I love about newsletters is or email in general, is that, those are consumed. It's a one-to-one medium. Even if you send to 1 million people, everyone is reading that in their inbox without any context of how many other people or who else is seeing it. That's really different than social media marketing, where you put something on social media and your message is being interpreted not just based on the message, but also how many likes does it have, how many comments does it have. Your customer or your reader's interpretation of it is heavily influenced by what everyone else is saying. Now, that can be a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing. Email and newsletters in particular is one-to-one. So I'll give you a quick example. Your audience only knows their perspective of whatever you're telling them is really in your control. So in the early days of my newsletter, when I didn't have a lot of readers or a ton of engagement, whatever, I might ask a question in one newsletter, and let's say 3 people might have replied with an answer because I didn't have a big audience. But in the next issue, in the intro, I might say, oh, I was blown away by all the responses I got to that question. Other people, it's not a lie, I was thrilled that 3 people replied. But other people perceive that as, wow, this newsletter must really be catching on. This community must really be engaged. This must really be a thing. That same thing done on social media, they would see that it got 3 likes or 2 comments or whatever, and it would not carry the same, you're able to control perception better or influence perception better in email. The other thing is email is a 2-way communication platform. So lots of people will reply to a newsletter or an email that would not comment on social media because they don't want other people to see their question because they think it's dumb, or they don't want other people to see what they have to say. But that one-to-one element is really powerful and creates an intimacy. Another thing about a newsletter being relational is it's habit forming. Nobody is opening their inbox on Sunday morning going, oh, I hope I get another sales email. Like, they're just not doing that. But if you send a newsletter consistently and you're consistently providing value, you have the ability to become a habit for your customers and audience which is incredibly powerful, obviously, for all sorts of reasons. And then the third thing here about it being relational is the newsletter gives you the opportunity to be much more personal than email marketing or sales tends to be, right? You can, they will feel like they know you, and we'll get into this later down the road, but that's especially true if it's actually coming from a person, right? If you work for a clothing brand, a newsletter that comes from the brand's head designer is going to be way more personal and way more interesting than a generic brand newsletter. So personal is another thing that you can do, but it's unlikely that it's unlikely that the brand's designer is going to be sending your email marketing sales email saying, please buy my new designs. Switching back to email marketing. So again, it tends to be about conversion. And what that means is you're usually aiming your email marketing emails at your existing audience. They're designed to drive action. They typically are focused on one objective. Maybe you have multiple products, but most of those marketing emails are probably about selling one of them or getting people to take one specific action. They tend to be aimed, because they're aimed at an existing audience, they tend to be aimed at people that are ready to buy or at least close to buy. You're not really bringing in new people. You're sort of trying to push them over the edge to get them to convert. And most of those email marketing emails tend to be designed to counter objections, right? If you're trying to get someone to buy that thing, a lot of what your email is going to be structured about is what are the reasons that they haven't bought the thing yet. Again, on the flip side, a newsletter is almost the opposite. A newsletter is a tool for audience growth, right? You're writing something that is helpful or useful. You're writing something that has personality. You're writing something that can position your brand in a market and give them a sense of who you are and why they should care. A huge difference is sales emails don't attract subscribers. A newsletter will actually bring new people to you because it's about providing value, not extracting value. So if you're not using a newsletter, if the only emails you're sending are promotional or sales oriented, you're missing a potentially massive channel to actually attract new customers and new audience. Along with that, a newsletter drives word of mouth. Nobody's forwarding a sales email or a marketing promotional email. Lots of people, if your newsletter is good, will forward it, will tell other people about it. Oh, I got, so much value, especially when you're in a niche where, you're in a particular industry and those people all talk to each other and they go, oh my God, have you seen this? Have you seen this newsletter? You have to check it out. And then fewer unsubscribes. You're always going to get unsubscribes, whether you send a newsletter, an email, marketing email, whatever. But the truth is, if you're providing value on a regular basis, you're going to get a lot fewer unsubscribes than you would typically get from marketing emails. Okay, so all of this is a long-winded way of saying you need both. I'm not suggesting you stop doing email marketing and only do a newsletter. I'm not suggesting you only do email marketing and not do a newsletter. Because in your business, you most likely need conversions and audience growth. That's why you need email marketing and a newsletter. And again, like I said in the beginning, all of these reasons are why a newsletter will make your email marketing more valuable. Some other advantages of having a newsletter unlocks opportunities that you don't have through email marketing or even through other channels. A big one of those is promotional opportunities. Once you have a newsletter is really an asset, and you can use that asset in a variety of ways. It creates a space for you to do cross promotions with other brands, with other newsletters, with anyone else, other social media influencers, anyone that has an audience. Cross promotions are a free way to grow your audience. It's unlikely that, let's say another newsletter, they're not going to do a cross. Let's say you're a clothing brand, a newsletter or blog or somebody that has an audience in the fashion space is unlikely to promote your sales emails. It doesn't make sense, or they're going to want money. But if you have a newsletter with an audience that overlaps with theirs, it's very possible that they say, hey, you can say, we'll mention you in ours, you mention us in yours, and both of you will grow your audience. And you can do that without having to send a standalone, it fits very nicely into a newsletter. A newsletter also can create revenue opportunities. If you can build a large or targeted audience around it that people want to reach, you can incorporate sponsorships. You're not going to sell a sponsorship into your sales emails. You probably don't want to send one-off emails to, promote other people's stuff. But if you have a newsletter, you can create a space where it may make sense to have a sponsorship. That's what's happened with my newsletter. I actually have 5 ads in each newsletter that I sell to people. And the irony is my audience is the one buying those ads in most cases, which is pretty interesting. Affiliate revenue, again, you have a way to reach people. So if you do want to partner with others and promote other people's products, maybe that are complementary to your product, this gives you a way to monetize them, again, without sending people one-off emails that they might be like, why am I getting an email about this other company's product? I didn't sign up to their list. But if they're looking at your newsletter and they're getting value from the newsletter, there are ways to incorporate that and add additional revenue. And then partnerships in general, again, it's another asset you have that you can leverage. So I thought it would be helpful to look at a couple examples of some people that are, brands, organizations, people that are doing this well. And so we'll go through a few of those. The Do Lectures is actually based in Wales, I believe. They have a conference. From a business standpoint, they do a conference, sort of TED Talks-ish. And then they also sell a variety of workshops on marketing and productivity and business and that kind of thing. Their newsletter is not, while they do send email marketing, sort of one-off emails promoting those courses and that kind of thing, every week their email is called the Chicken Shed Chronicles. And it's a collection of interesting articles and stories about creative people and change makers. And it has nothing, they may mention their products and services in, conference and courses in there occasionally, but that's not the point. The point is to provide their audience of sort of creative people and change makers with interesting stories and inspiration and value. Super effective. David Hyatt is actually the founder of Do Lectures, and he also is the founder of the Hyatt Denim Company. He has the same approach with his denim company, and this was a quote he said that I thought really sums it up. The newsletter is the most important tool I have in building a global denim brand, second only to the sewing machine. That, again, and this speaks right to people who might go, okay, I get it, newsletters are important, but it doesn't fit what I do. Well, if it fits a denim brand, then it can fit what you do. Luke Smyers, he is a consultant who teaches consultants. His newsletter is called The Visible Authority. And again, this is a perfect example where, he's not sending a newsletter or emails just promoting his service. He's sending a newsletter that is all about sharing expertise, not only his own, but other articles and things that he finds that are going to help his target audience, which is consultants, get better at their business. And again, it's not that he won't do email marketing too. He will send the occasional one-off to promote his service or his workshops or whatever it is. But on a weekly basis, you're always going to get this newsletter, which is super, super valuable. It's not just email marketing. And he's, a good example. Like, the only reason I know about him as opposed to a million other consultants that are out there is because of this newsletter. It's not because of his email marketing. StoryThings is a strategy and content company. Their newsletter is just called StoryThings, and they are sharing a curated collection of interesting stuff about how to tell better stories, basically, and how to communicate. Super valuable, really good. It's all curated. I don't believe they actually create any of it. So we'll get into this down the road in terms of like how much time it takes to run a newsletter. But as a result, like, again, perfect example, I know the StoryThings agency because of this newsletter. There's a million creative agencies out there that I've never heard of, because their emails are probably just like, hey, check out the client that we got this week, or here's the new project that we did. Like, nobody really is going to sign up to be promoted to. Robinhood, I'm sure you've heard of. It's the investing app. Again, their newsletter, and this is a daily newsletter, I believe, called Robinhood Snacks, and they're basically sharing the financial news of the day. This is smart. This is valuable. They're not just sending emails that are saying, oh, here's our new feature, or have you upgraded to this, or, you know, they're like, what is our audience value? Let's give it to them, right? So they know that giving people financial news is valuable not only to their customers, but to people who are not yet their customers. And if every day they're getting value from Robinhood, at some, you know, they're able to promote their stuff. And then also some of those people are going to become customers. It may seem obvious in some ways, but if you think about it, most brands and most companies are not doing this. And my guess is, without knowing anything about anybody that's here, most of you probably are not doing a newsletter in this way, or certainly not consistently. To give you an idea of how this can really be applied to anything, Nick Cave is a musician, and unlike most musicians and creative artists who just send emails once in a blue moon to promote their shows or ask you to buy tickets or buy their album, he sends, I believe this is weekly, a newsletter called the Red Hand Files. Incredibly simple. In each issue, he just answers briefly a question that he gets from fans. And the questions can be about, you know, is it important to have friends? You know, like, the questions can be about his work, but it can be about life. It can be about his perspective on anything. It's fascinating. This newsletter has been massively successful. It was written about actually in the New Yorker a couple of years ago, and really not hard to do. And this, again, we'll get into this when we get into sort of content creation, but you can imagine why his fans would love it. He's giving something that they will then share and talk about. And it's as simple as send me some questions and I'll send you a few paragraphs of an answer to each of them. Again, it can be done. It can work for anything. You know, the difference between Robinhood and Nick Cave is massive, and yet they're both sort of using the same newsletter tactic. Then myself, my newsletter is for the interested. Like I said, it is the hub of everything that I do. And it's really simple. You know, I do write one original blog post each week. That's usually what goes in the first thing. And then I share 4 other sort of curated stuff that's going to be of interest to my audience of creators and entrepreneurs. And it directly is the engine for sort of all of my business. There's countless more examples, but those should hopefully give you sort of a sense of how this can work. So, assuming I've hopefully convinced you to at least consider starting a newsletter at this point, the next obvious question is, okay, well, how do you do it? And what would your newsletter be if it's not going to be strictly promotional? And how do you create value? So I think one of the things that, and we'll have a worksheet for this that we'll give you at the end, but I think the best place to start, and we're going to go through it in detail in the next sessions, but the best place to start is to answer these 4 questions in order. The first question is, what's your goal? What do you want to accomplish? And I don't mean what's your goal for the newsletter or what's your goal for email, but I mean in general for your business. What are you trying to accomplish? Is it sales? Is it leads? Is it brand positioning? Is it whatever it is? Is it audience growth? Like, what are you trying to accomplish? Why are you doing anything, right? Once you have that in mind, the next question is, who do you need to reach to accomplish it, right? So no matter what the goal is, it's like, who are those people that you need to reach that are going to buy your product, or you want to be in your audience or support your cause or whatever it may be. Once you identify sort of who those people are that you need to reach to accomplish your goal, the next question is, what do those people value, right? Forget about what you have and what you currently do, but what do they value? What do they want? in general, and it may not specifically align with your product. So I'll give you a quick example. I had a conversation. There was somebody who had a logo design business. And I had talked to him about this, and I was saying, you really need a newsletter. And he was like, but I design logos, and like nobody wants a logo newsletter, right? and once they get a logo, they certainly don't want a logo newsletter. And I said, you're absolutely right. You should not have a logo newsletter. And I sort of took him through this, and I said, what's your goal? And he said, oh, I want to get people to buy logos. And I said, who do you need to reach to accomplish it? And we wound up sort of coming up with, he really needs to reach, sort of new startup founders or people that are like sort of in the early stages of their business, obviously people who are going to need a logo. And I said, what do those people value? And that's where it sort of takes a turn, right? Because someone who's starting up a business doesn't just value, oh, I need a logo or advice about logos. They need to know all sorts of stuff about starting up a business and getting going. A logo is not the only thing they need. So what I was saying to him is I was like, your newsletter, and again, he doesn't have to create the content, it can be curated, but your newsletter should be designed to, I said, for example, if you had a newsletter that was designed to serve people who are in the first 2 months of launching a business, every one of those people would sign up in a minute because they're like, I'm just starting up and I need advice about this kind of stuff. But those people are also going to need a logo. So you're going to attract your ideal audience by creating a newsletter, not about logos, but about the sort of things that those people value, and those people happen to need a logo. So that's an example of sort of how to think about it. And then once you figure out sort of what those people value, the next question is, how can you provide that value to them in a newsletter on a consistent basis, right? So in the example I just gave, I said, look, you could very easily find some of the best articles, resources that other people have created about what to do in the first couple months of starting a company. And all you have to do is find them and share them. And that's going to be this valuable resource that's going to attract people who are starting companies and don't have a logo yet. And that's your ideal audience. And so that can lead to ultimately what you want and who you need to reach to accomplish your goal. So we'll give you a worksheet, and I would recommend you sort of think through these questions, but I thought it might be really helpful to try it live here. So if anybody wants to volunteer, I think we were going to say they should just say so in the chat, and we'll, not sure in terms of time, but we'll pick 1 or 2 people, and I'll sort of walk through these questions with you and help you maybe get some ideas of what your newsletter topic could be.
Oh, looks like we've got 2 volunteers. Kwanzaa, I will go ahead and have you go first, and Michael, you can go second.
Hi, Josh. How are you? Thanks. This is awesome.
Oh, good. Thank you.
I have the big bright blue background with the logo in the top. So, Josh, I have Nation Wedding Business up under one name called A Wedding Breeze, and then I have a beach bar and venue called Chat and Chill.
Okay.
Bar and Grill, which is a restaurant, beach bar, venue, and shop. And they're 2 different businesses, but they're related. There's a lot of, so after the wedding, right? I, just like you said, like once someone gets a logo, like talk about weddings anymore, like they're married, they don't want to hear any more tips, or like they've been down that path. So should I just direct them into the chat and chill conversation about relaxing, venue, visits to our destination, or do I keep them in a wedding breeze news about and I can go through these questions. You can tell me, we can just answer them for a wedding breeze, or keep them there about nesting and whatever else, like finances or you know, that they're
So,
starting
okay,
off
so
as a new life together.
let's start here. Let's go question by question, right? So forget the newsletter for a second. What's your goal? What are you trying to accomplish?
I'm trying to that the people that visit our island either get married here or visit the beach bar, that they have a long-term relationship with our island and that they'll keep coming back for years. Like this becomes like a family destination for them, and it benefits the whole island. Obviously, I want them to come back to my beach bar
Right.
and stuff and rent our stuff, but it's more of a nation marketing, you know, desire.
Okay. Who do you need to reach to accomplish it? People that I assume have already been to the island or are coming to the island, or
Both. Yeah. People already been here, and people who are coming so that they know to come visit us when they're here
and
come check out the beach bar.
Is it a specific type of person that comes to the island?
Outdoor enthusiasts, off the beaten path. It's a very small market destination, no big price hotels, there's no traffic lights, no fast food, no cruise ships, no crowds. It's, you know, it's like laid back,
Okay.
not pretentious, no gambling, nightlife.
Okay, so this is a bit of a stretch because I'm riffing here, but bear with me, right? So if you were to brand that kind of people and what they like as the sort of Bahamas lifestyle, right? Think about it as a lifestyle, right? And the pinnacle is coming there, right? Coming there and all of that stuff. But really, it's a newsletter about how to live the Bahamas lifestyle, both at the Bahamas, you know, ideally the pinnacle is you come there and you come to your place and whatever. But even if you're not there, right? Or you've been, I come visit and I come back to Los Angeles, but I had a great time and I'd love to take a piece. I'd love to incorporate pieces of the Bahamas lifestyle into my life, right? That's the newsletter.
Yeah.
So the newsletter becomes, and you might even, again, I'm riffing here and this is going sort of further down the line, but you might even, maybe in each issue of the newsletter, there's one section about how you can live the Bahamas lifestyle when you're not in the Bahamas, how you can take it home with you, how you can whatever. And there's one section about living the Bahamas lifestyle in the Bahamas. Come to my play, you know, like what, again, not just promotional, but you're creating this Bahamas lifestyle newsletter, which is going to appeal to people who have been there and love it, people who are going there, and people who are like, wow, outdoors and whatever, however you define it as, that sounds like me. And maybe someday I'll get there, but that's interesting. So you see how I'm taking the sort of specifics of weddings and bar, broadening it out to like, what do those people actually want? And in doing so, it sort of creates relevance, not just to your point, I'm theoretically only getting married once, right? So I don't need wedding advice after that. But I got married in the Bahamas and I had an amazing time. And someday I want to go back, or I just want to capture some of that Bahamas culture, lifestyle in my own way. And so that's a newsletter that, you know, those people will stick on, and getting them to stick on it. You know, let's say the person who comes and get married, right? And then they're like, oh, I love, you know, I've taken some of this Bahamas lifestyle with me, keeps you front of mind. So when they're telling someone else who's getting married, oh, the Bahamas, you should check out this newsletter, you should whatever. So does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
And I think also for you, it's positioning you as, you know, this is what also gets interesting, right? Because it can create other opportunities, PR and all. You're positioning yourself as sort of this expert on the Bahamas lifestyle and culture. And that's really interesting, let alone for all the people that have lived there, or maybe, you know, like all of a sudden you can see why lots of people would subscribe to that and want to be a part of that, that aren't that you previously didn't necessarily have any reason for them to connect with you outside of they're specifically looking for a bar or wedding. Cool.
And that's cool, like kind of like the guide, because I'm not Bahamian. So, you know, that's where I guess a little bit of an authenticity. I've been here 18 years. I'm married to a man, so I guess that's kind of like the guide. You know, I don't have to be the
Right. It doesn't have to be you. And it could be you exploring and learning about Bahamian culture. It could be you, again, once you go down this road, there's a lot of different ways to do it, right? You could have each issue be sort of from a guest person who is an expert, right? Here's, this, so you could do it in a lot of different ways. By the way, like this is a total side note and marketing hack. But if you do that, the person that you get to sort of be the guest contributor or give their picks will then also share on social media. So there's built-in promotion of that as well. So you can do, once you sort of start with that idea of like, I'm going to create the ultimate like Bahamas lifestyle newsletter. Now there's all sorts of ways that you could go with it.
Well, now I want to go
Thank
to
you so
the Bahamas.
Sure.
Now, I need to go to the Bahamas now.
Yeah, exactly.
Next,
Should we do one more?
yeah, I have Michael Frank is next up.
Cool.
Hi,
Hey, Michael.
thanks for doing this workshop.
Sure. Thanks for coming.
My goal is to find musicians who are, to find musicians who have been professionals for a long time, but who have not reached the level of career or a particular career goal that they want.
Mhm.
And to provide content that will help them, give them little tidbits that will help them with a particular challenge.
Okay.
And to use the newsletter to find coaching and consulting clients that I've just described.
Okay.
Specifically in blues, folk, niche.
Okay.
In other words, my content may be valuable to people who are hip hoppers, but those are not people that I want to work with long term. And another goal is also to find musicians who, having gone through benefited from my services, or who are at a certain level that might be somebody I might want to release on my own record label.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's partly prospecting, partly to provide a service to the musicians in that niche that have been around a long time, but are not really, well known, but who have a lot of talent. So those people value some ways to improve, some new insights on what they're doing and how to, and acknowledgement of their talent.
Mm-hmm.
They value people that believe in the business that believe in their talent.
Yeah. So let me ask you, is it about for them, and like when you consult with them and that kind of stuff, is it about helping them figure out how to sort of establish their own independent career, or is it about helping them figure out how to get discovered or signed by a label or something like that? Or both?
It varies. It's my experience so far has been some want to be discovered by a label, but actually that part of my process is to help them figure out why they want to be discovered by a label, to go deeper. So
but is it like tactical? Are you also giving them sort of tactical career advice, like
yes,
how to get your music listened to on Spotify and hear like that kind of stuff?
Yes, and in that
Here's how to
respect,
book
partly,
gigs, that kind of thing.
yeah, in that respect, part of what I'm doing is curating content and then provide, for myself as a record label owner and also trying to up my own game, but in the process, finding the things that independent artists can do on their own so they don't need to be on a label necessarily, which is really what's so.
But the target audience is primarily people. It's not sort of new up and comers. It's people that have been doing this for a while and they haven't got where they want to go, right? It's like more veteran, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, they're not new up and comers, but they may, in terms of public recognition, they might be unknown, but they're not new up and comers in that respect, in terms of their longevity, their level of talent, or their level of skill, or how long they've been doing it.
Okay. So I think first of all, a newsletter is a perfect fit for that. And I think it's, in some ways, well, it's interesting. So before For the Interested years ago, and you should go check this out, it might give you some ideas. I haven't updated it in forever, but I ran a blog and newsletter called Connected Comedy. It's connectedcomedy.com. And it was all about basically teaching comedians how to use social media and digital tools to grow their career. So very similar, forget the sort of digital piece, but very similar to what you're talking about. It was just, here's how can I help you? If you're a comedian, how can I help you get to where you want to go and figure out where you want to go and all of that. So I think you when you look at that, I think you'll be able to you'll probably see some similarities and go, oh, I could create this type of content for my people. My advice to you, and I think it's a great niche, by the way, is, I would create a newsletter that's designed to share that kind of information. Basically all the stuff that you talked about, seems like you have a pretty clear idea on it. But I think I would position the newsletter niche, it's not the Michael Frank newsletter. It's you come up with some name that reflects sort of this isn't a great name, but like Second Stage or what, that reflects that it's not for newbies, right? You're going to separate and reposition yourself, not for like new musicians, right? It's for people that have been at this for a while, and it's for blues folk, right? Which is specific, but anyone who is in that position, that newsletter is an absolute no-brainer for them to subscribe to. And I always talk about value is transformation. So if you want to figure out how to make something valuable, you think about what the transformation is. So the transformation in this case is it's someone who has talent, is established, but how do they get from where they are to the point where they're sort of have a more flourishing career, right? So this newsletter is all about that transformation, and I think it will do really well. And that's also like one of the things I found with Connected Comedy is, in the arts like that, those communities are very connected. So the nice thing you'll have is all those musicians know other musicians. So word of mouth in a niche like that can spread. Now, again, there's only so many people, but there's plenty for what you need. And word of mouth in that kind of a community can spread very quickly, because that I know of, there is no other newsletter or blog out there that's specifically targeting those people, right? So they'll love it, and I think there's a lot of potential.
And there are a lot of people who are teaching courses for musicians on how to do things in their careers, but I haven't found a newsletter. They have email they send out to people who are trying to get new business or who have bought a course, but I'm not seeing newsletters that sort of curate but create specific stuff within a particular niche.
Yeah, and it's also, by the way, it's also very similar to my For the Interested newsletter. So like I describe my newsletter as it helps creators produce, promote, and profit from their creations. So it's not that hard to think about your newsletter being for, established blues and folk artists, helping them produce, promote, and profit from their music. Like it's not, I think if you look at my newsletter again, you'll be able to, my For the Interested newsletter, you'll be able to see very easily how you could do the same thing for your niche, and it would probably do very well.
Josh, we have a question.
Yeah.
Before we wrap it up, Jason asked, what makes Robinhood a newsletter? It seems like email marketing content that is designed to get people to take action along with building credibility.
So that Robinhood Snacks, not Robinhood the app, but Robinhood, I mean, the new Robinhood Snacks is the newsletter from Robinhood the app. And if you look at it, it is it's basically a daily summary of financial news. So it's not about their product. It's about, here's the news of the day, which is valuable to people because it may help them invest, whether they use Robinhood or not. Does that make sense? So it's almost like, you know, Morning Brew, but for finance. Does that answer it, hopefully?
I think so. I love Morning Brew too.
Right.
Newsletter. So, well, it looks like we're about at the end of our time and we don't have any other questions. So I think we'll wrap it up for today. First, with a big thank you to you, Josh, for today's session. And because we value your time and your knowledge. I could listen for hours. It's so fascinating to me because I get lots of stupid newsletters. So I could listen to someone who does it right. The recording of this session is going to be available in the lab within 24 hours. Our next session is going to be Thursday, December 9th at 1 p.m. Central Time. And Joshua is going to be getting into newsletter topics and format. So don't forget to register. And we invite you to go to the DM Engage Facebook group to discuss today's session. And we'll see you back here on Thursday.